Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today, because today we are looking at the invisible architecture of the world's most popular sport. You see, when we watch modern football, or soccer, depending on where you're from, we see this beautifully structured, highly tactical game. But that pristine structure we all know today, yeah, it is actually the result of over 150 years of relentless trial, absolute error, and some truly bizarre rules that most fans have completely forgotten about. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to picture a modern football pitch for a second. A striker makes a brilliant run, the ball is lobbed perfectly through the air, but instead of heading it into the net, the player catches the ball with their hands, claims a fair catch, and then scores a touchdown. Sounds utterly ridiculous, right? It literally sounds like a completely different sport. Well, I couldn't believe this myself when I first read it, but according to the actual original 1863 Football Association laws of the game, association football included rules like fair catches and touchdowns. They borrowed them directly from rugby. And get this, if you got a touchdown, you didn't even get a point. You were just granted a free kick. Oh, and as a quick side note, to score a goal back then, you actually had to kick the ball over the crossbar, not under it. Now, by 1866, these specific rules were stripped away, but it really sets the stage for how wildly different the game used to be. Section 1, the Wild West of football. If you were to time travel back to the late 1800s, you honestly wouldn't even recognize the sport. There was virtually no structure, no fixed positions, and tactically, you couldn't even pass forward, because any player ahead of the kicker was deemed offside. So instead of passing, dozens of players would just swarm the ball in this chaotic, brutal battle for survival. And when I say brutal, I mean legally lethal. In the early days, hacking, which is kicking an opponent beneath the knee, and violent charging were entirely part of the game. This all culminated in a shocking incident in 1878 known as the Ashby football manslaughter case. An 18-year-old player named William Bradshaw was literally tried for manslaughter. During a match, he charged an opponent, raised his knee, and violently jumped on the man's stomach. Tragically, the player died a day later. But because rough charging was just so commonplace at the time, the jury actually found Bradshaw not guilty, deeming it an unfortunate accident in a heated game. The violence got so incredibly out of hand that the world-renowned medical journal, The Lancet, actually began publishing these grim, ongoing lists of players suffering broken legs, fractured collarbones, and internal injuries from weekend matches. It was so dangerous that in 1896, the famous satirical publication Punch magazine printed a list of mock rules, jokingly suggesting that surgeons, ambulances, and proper nurses absolutely must be made mandatory at all games. It's a hilarious piece of satire, for sure, but it really underscores just how chaotic the pitch had become. Let's move along and see how this builds, because the authorities finally realized they had to step in and patch this game-breaking chaos. In a frantic 4-year window, they fundamentally overhauled the sport's mechanics. In 1887, they restricted the goalkeeper from handling the ball on the opponent's half. In 1888, boom, the drop ball was introduced to fairly restart suspended play. By 1889, referees could finally send players off for repeated cautious behavior. And in 1890, they removed the ability to score a direct goal from a goal kit. They were just desperately trying to build a modern sport out of sheer mayhem. Section 2. Birth of the penalty kick. Now, beyond the physical violence, a massive cultural clash was brewing on the pitch. This was between the gritty, working-class professionals up north and the aristocratic gentlemen down south. And this clash was specifically over the very concept of cheating, which brings us to the birth of the penalty kick in 1891. The idea actually came from a Northern Irish goalkeeper named William McCrum in 1890. McCrum was reportedly a pretty lousy goalkeeper, but he was incredibly frustrated by seeing clearer, exciting goal-scoring opportunities absolutely ruined by cynical, intentional fouls, basically what we'd call emergency stops today. So he proposed a man-to-man duel, a free kick from 12 yards out for intentional tripping, holding, or deliberate handballs near the goal. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the reaction from the gentlemen amateur players of the era. They absolutely despised it. Legendary Corinthians player C.B. Fry even called the penalty kick a standing insult to sportsmen. Why? Well, because football was originally a gentleman's game. To them, a true gentleman would never intentionally cheat or deliberately foul to gain an edge. They felt the very existence of a rule punishing intentional fouls was just completely beneath them. In fact, I was amazed to discover that if awarded a penalty, gentlemen amateur teams would often deliberately miss it in protest. Section 3. The goalkeeper's God mode. As the gentleman's honor system faded out and players got more competitive, teams looked for new ways to bend the rules. And nobody had more power to bend the rules than the goalkeeper. For a massive chunk of football history, the goalkeeper had overpowered abilities that, honestly, nearly ruined the entertainment value of the whole sport. For decades, if a teammate kicked the ball back to their own goalkeeper, the keeper could simply pick it up with their hands. So teams defending a lead would just pass the ball back to the keeper, over and over and over, waiting for the opposition to get frustrated. It reached an absolute breaking point during the 1990 World Cup. Matches were so painfully boring that crowds were literally falling asleep in the stands. An infamous game between Ireland and Egypt ended 0-0, with the ball barely leaving the Irish half due to these endless back passes. FIFA had seen enough. In 1992, they banned keepers from picking up deliberate back passes. Overnight, keepers had to learn footwork, and the pace of the modern game just exploded. Section 4. Fixing the modern game. So the crucial point is that the 1992 change proved something huge. Tweaking just one or two specific disciplinary rules can completely transform modern tactical play overnight. Before 1990, if a defender deliberately tripped a player who was through on goal, the punishment was merely a yellow card, just a warning. You gotta stay on the pitch. Because of this, professional defenders were literally trained by their coaches to commit the professional foul. It was the smart tactical move. You take the yellow card to save a guaranteed goal. But in 1990, FIFA flipped the script. They introduced the immediate red card for stopping a goal-scoring opportunity. Suddenly, the clever professional foul became the absolute worst mistake a defender could make. It completely rewired how defenders have to approach the game today. Section 5. Failed experiments and flops. But listen, for every brilliant rule change that saved the game, there are a handful of trials that completely backfired. First up, the golden goal, which was used between 1993 and 2004. The idea was simple: sudden death in extra time. First team to score immediately wins. It was supposed to create massive drama, but instead, it made teams absolutely terrified to concede. Extra time became the most cautious, defensive, boring football imaginable, and FIFA eventually had to abolish it. Then, in the late 90s, FIFA trialed kick-ins to replace throw-ins, hoping to speed up restarts. Instead, players just started launching dangerous direct goal-scoring set pieces from the sidelines, and that trial was quietly killed off. And then we had the IFAB penalty shootout experiment from 2017. Why did they try this? Because the data shows that the team who shoots first in a traditional alternating penalty shootout wins about 60% of the time. That is a massive psychological advantage. To fix this, they tested a tennis tiebreak style system. Team A shoots, then Team B takes 2 kicks, then Team A takes 2, and so on. But it completely confused the fans in the stadium and everyone watching at home. The confusion was just so high that wider adoption was totally scrapped, leaving that 60% advantage intact to this very day. Section 6. The future of the pitch. And this brilliantly illustrates where we are today. If changing the fundamental laws of the game often results in unintended chaos, how does the sport continue to evolve? Well, we've basically moved from changing human behavior to fixing human error. Look at the 2010 World Cup, where Frank Lampard's shot for England clearly crossed the goal line but wasn't given. That massive controversy directly forced the implementation of goal line technology in 2014, and later the video assistant referee, or VAR, in 2018. Rather than changing how the players play, modern rules are entirely focused on using tech to ensure precision and accountability from the officials observing the play. Football isn't just about the incredible athletes on the pitch. It is heavily dictated by the invisible structure of the rules. Rules that have morphed from a chaotic, violent free-for-all into a highly calibrated, tech-driven chess match. But sometimes, looking back at the past makes us realize just how wildly different the game could be. So I leave you with this. If you had the power to resurrect one piece of the past to shake up the modern game, which forgotten rule would you bring back? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the rules of the game.